Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Last week we discussed the attitude of Jewish law on human sexual behavior, and we dealt with all kinds of issues from premarital sex to abortion and adultery and contraception. And more importantly, the basic attitude of man and woman towards each other. Today, I would like to talk about a different aspect of sex, but not really sex, but the different sexes. I'd like to talk about the feminine side of the human being and the nature of the feminine.
I'm blaming him.
Last week I ended by asking you to think about a question. Right? Why did women wear shoulder pads? It was actually 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Very strange question, right? After 10-15 minutes or so, I'm going to come back to that question. See if you can figure out an answer. When God created man, the Torah says, "Zachar unekeva bara otam." The God created man, male and female. Adam, our sages would tell us in the commentaries, was an androgynous human being. Not like Pat on Saturday Night Live. But both male and female. And when God created Eve, he took the rib from Adam, but more importantly, just the rib, he took the feminine side and separated it from the masculine. And it is the desire of both male and female to reunite with each other to bring that union back together. Now, since the masculine force in society has been stronger in terms of physical strength, for so long the masculine side of society has dominated. But the feminine force is extremely potent, but we have been ignoring it. Philosophers have taught, especially modern philosophers like Kant. I would consider him modern because he really was in the forefront of changing the direction of philosophy. They've taught that man is the source of ethics. And you, from your own reason, decide what is right and what is wrong. Now, this has led to a certain humanism and liberalism. That man is the source of real value in the world. The problem is that values change. And what you have and what you are left with is more or less a relative ethics. Relative ethics. If somebody steals or kills, it's not their fault. If they were raised in a disadvantaged home and maybe their parents were drug addicts, maybe they never knew their father, it's not their fault. This is relative ethics. We decide what's relatively correct. The Nazis were wonderful with relative ethics. They built their whole system, the positivistic ethical system. If you can reason that any group of human beings is below you, and you want to build a super race, then you could just go out and do so and destroy them. Judaism rejects both notions that man is the source of our values and the ethics can be relative. At the beginning of the Ten Commandments, we discussed this last week, Ten Commandments begins, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God. Why does it begin that way? Why does the Ten Commandments, which is not necessarily the Ten Commandments, but really the 10 principles, which is a repository of categories for all the 613 commandments plus 7 commandments of mankind? Why does it begin with I am the Lord your God? All the commandments of how we should live our life begins with I am the Lord your God, because God is the source of ethics and morality in the world. Man has value only because he was created in the image of God. And we reject relative ethics. God is the absolute value. Someone steals, someone kills. It's wrong because God says so. There's got to be a point in society when we come to a decision that things are right and certain things are wrong. And that's because God says so. That has to be there. It has to be above our own reasoning. Because if it's within our own reasoning, then we'll always get caught in a vicious trap in reorienting what is right and wrong. The problem we have, what happens when society's goals and values are in conflict with Judaism? Society changes real fast. You think about the world of the 90s. Just think back. Most of you can remember what the world was like in the 70s. And some of you, maybe some of you like myself, can remember what the world was like in the 60s and the 50s. It's a different world. I mean, like every decade is almost a different world. And the 50s were a time where 90% of the families were father, mother, and children, and the mother stayed home, and family values were just nothing was talked about because it was just that's the way it was. And the families were a time where there was a lot of prejudice, and the 50s were a time with a prejudice and a lot of ugliness in the world, but it was quiet and brushed aside. You know, rabid anti-Semitism, racism, separate but equal schools in the South, that sort of thing. 60s, the flower children are making their way in the world, and they want to change the world, and hang loose, and Timothy Leary, and drugs, and that continued into the 70s. The Woodstock generation, and then we started to move towards the 80s with the me generation, and the yuppies, and the materialism. That's kind of swinging around as we get to now. Should we make Judaism fit into the current values that society is holding at the particular time we are living? What do you do when Judaism is in conflict with society's goals and values? Well, there are 3 different approaches. First is you could become an observant Jewish secularist. That's a strange term. You could adopt the values and goals of society, observe by rote Jewish customs at the same time. But you relegate Judaism to a shallow formalism. In other words, you compartmentalize your life. Yes, when you come to shul, and that's your Jewish part. Or when you do certain rituals at home, that's the Jewish part of your life. But the rest of your life, you're just like everybody else. Problem with that is that God demands allegiance not only from our feet, but but from our heart. Second approach will be to avoid the secular world whatsoever. They come like the most of the Hasidic sects in America, or the Amish. You just do your own thing, and you don't allow any radio, television, and newspapers into your communities. And the third way is to assimilate what is good in society and make them your own, and to integrate Torah and secular general knowledge. And this is what generally I would consider the healthy approach. It's the approach of Yeshiva University where I learned. It's called Torah Umada. In other words, it's an approach that says that all of knowledge informs upon our understanding of Torah and God in the world. And so, one should study physics and chemistry and sociology and psychology and all the disciplines. Why? Because it informs on your understanding of the world, and therefore will inform upon your understanding of Torah. And they're not in conflict. They're just not in conflict. Those of you who have taken my course this past year on Genesis, we just got through the first day. I'm going to do the rest of them next year. No, I think we did the whole first day. I think it was about 4 or 5 sentences. You're right, it took the whole semester to do the first sentence.
Yeah.
Second semester, I did the rest of the first day. But you would see that everything that we have learned about science, what we know now about science, about atomic theory and theory of relativity from Einstein, helps us understand what the Torah was talking about and what the sages of Kabbalah were talking about. It seemed like it was such a mystical thing. It wasn't. They were talking about matter and energy and how they interact. And if you weren't there and you want to read about it, I have notes. Okay. What does the Torah say about a woman? Well, I can go through the story with you in Genesis, but I'm going to save a little time. Woman was created as first, as I said, as part of man, and then she was separated from man, and she was called Chava, from the Hebrew Chai, which means life, and she was to be the Aim Kol Chai, the mother of all living things. This is the description that the Torah brings to what a woman is, the mother of all living things. This is not an exclusive task of the mother or the feminine, but it is a very, very important, strong feminine trait, the mother of all things. Remember I mentioned to you that why a woman is on a higher spiritual plane than a man? Did I mention that last week? Remembers? God created the more primitive forms of life first. And then he, as he went up the scale, every creation, he created a higher form of life. Woman was the last creation of God.
But isn't there something?
And therefore, the woman is on a higher spiritual plane than man, and doesn't need as many Torah obligations to bring her to heights of spirituality. And so, therefore, a woman has fewer religious obligations than a man. Yes.
Isn't it on the bottom of page 19 in the Siddur? That doesn't say that about women at Knox.
Not at all.
Remember, Judy and I, Merlin, were going over that bit.
The Siddur said there's a prayer in the beginning of the morning service, by the way, which we don't recite in the synagogue, but because it's misunderstood by people, and I don't want it to get up. I don't want people to have a problem with it even though because they misunderstand it. Blessing says, "Blessed thou, Lord our God, King of the earth, who has not made me a woman." Why? Why was that blessing put there? The reason is, man recites this blessing because he has to have more Torah obligations during the day than a woman. Women are exempt from all obligations that are subject to time, bound by time. So if you must pray at a certain time in the day, woman has to pray during the day, but she doesn't have to pray at specific times. So that prayer is put there for the man, so he shouldn't feel bad about the fact that he has to have more obligations than the woman. And so he says it, he's saying to God, "Thank you, God, for allowing me to have all these extra obligations." That's why the prayer was initially put there, according to most of the sages. And what does a woman say when the man says, "Does not make me a woman"? A woman says, "Blessed art thou, Lord, our King of the universe, who has created me according to your image." Which means her image is closer to God than man. Yes.
Then how come it's her responsibility to make sure the house is prepared for everything and do all the cooking and do all that kind of stuff? Isn't that more menial than being in a synagogue and praying?
This is not what this prayer is saying.
Oh, okay. I know. I'm being a little bit more general.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
We'll get to that. Okay. Now, man was created. God said in the Torah, "Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim." That God blew into man the nishmat chayim, which is normally translated as the breath of life, but nishmat, neshama, in Hebrew doesn't mean breath so much. It means neshama means soul. God blew into man the soul of life. God put a living soul, not the soul of life, a living soul into man. We all have that divine spark within us. We are created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. We have that divine spark. This is what gives man ultimate value. By the way, in the middle of neshama, the word neshama, just those of you who can follow in Hebrew, I'll show you. In the middle of neshama, you have these two letters. In the middle of soul, you have there's someone in it.
Oh.
You have the shem. Shem. Shem is Hebrew for name. 3 letters, which shin mem can be read shem. Shem is name, means the name. In the middle of the soul is the name. What's the name? The name of God. It means God is in the soul. Shem always refers to God. That's the name. Soloveitchik talks, Rabbi Soloveitchik, may rest in peace, who was the head of Yeshiva University, talks about Adam 1 and Adam 2. There are 2 creations of man in the story of Genesis. And if you take a look at the first chapter, where God creates every day and tells what he created every day, and then the second chapter is like a review of what happened. In Adam 1, in the first chapter, is God who creates the world, is Elohim. This is a theme that I repeat very often. Elohim is the God of nature, the God who created the world. Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created Elohim. Elohim is the God of nature. He's the God who creates. As a matter of fact, the word Elohim, the numerology of it adds up to 86. If you add each value of each letter. And the word nature in Hebrew, hateva, the nature, also adds up to 86. Which shows that God is the God of nature. Man is created, his God, by the God of nature, and his task is to conquer the world. God tells you, Peru urvu milu et haaretz v'chishua. Be fruitful, multiply, fill up the earth, and conquer it. Conquer the world. He's obsessed with mastery and control. He sacrifices intimacy and fellowship. He's so driven to transform nature, he doesn't see himself as part of nature. And it's hard living up to God's image. Adam 2, in the second creation story, in chapter 2, That's when the female emerges, when God separates woman from man. Only after God discovers lo tov liot adam levado, that it's not good for man to live alone, woman is created as an ezer kenegdo, which it's very hard to translate. Ezer kenegdo. Ezer means helper, and kenegdo, neged in Hebrew means against, opposite. She's a helper opposite. Help opposite. That's what a woman is. A help opposite. She doesn't stand in submission to man. She stands opposite, equal to man. And it's not good that man should live alone. That man is incomplete when he is alone. Woman is incomplete when she is alone. It's only when they are joined together that they are complete, that they can combine these masculine and feminine elements that were separated. And that's when they feel complete, is when they have that sense. And the God in the second chapter of the Torah, in Adam 2, is Hashem. It's spelled Yud Hey Vav Hey, God's name. He's a personal God, God of love, God of redemption. He's the God that sees that he's God of compassion. He sees that Adam is alone and wants to help him and make a helpmate for him. Adam too is lonely. He yearns for sensitive compassion, companionship, for a soulmate. Unlike Adam 1 in the creation story, who wants to conquer the world, Adam 2 wants to submit to God to complete himself. He wants redemption. He doesn't want to control. He wants to be at one with nature. What do we find between the two creation stories? We find Shabbos, the Sabbath. You have six days of creation. You have the story about God resting on the seventh day. And then you have the repetition of the creation story in Adam 2. That is the way that man will be able to really define himself between these two Adams, the Adams that wants to conquer the world and the Adam that wants to submit to God and complete himself. Is to have Shabbos in between to figure out what's going on with his life. The Midrash teaches us that a woman was created in such a way so that she developed the specific trait of tzniut to its capacity. Tzniut. Write it down. Write down Hebrew and then in English for you. No, that's not tzaddik. Forget how to make it right. The root of the word is tzaddik, nun, and an ayin. Well, we have a understanding. If you talk to a religious woman, she'll talk about tznius, which is a Yiddish way of saying it, and she'll explain what tznius is. Tznius is that you don't wear skirts above the knee, and you don't wear short sleeve shirts or tank tops or halter tops, because that's tznius. It's not modest. Normally, it's translated as modesty. The word tzina occurs twice in the Bible. Once in the verse v'yet tzenuim chachma, which is those who are private in the Torah. There are those who are private will achieve wisdom. It's in Proverbs 11:2, and sages understand this to mean those who are private in the Torah learning will achieve wisdom. The second verse, he has told you, man, what is good and what the Lord demands from you, but, this is a very famous saying from Micah 6:8, but do justice, love kindness, and walk tzina privately with your God.
Usually translated humbly.
Humbly. Okay. It's very hard to translate tzina. But tzina refers to what's hidden, what's the inner. So someone could be humble because he's not open. He doesn't show his greatness, right? It's hidden within. So that's how the translation of humble comes about. When anyone, male or female, serves God, they must concentrate on the inner dimensions of personality. Tzniut is the inner directed aspect of striving, the essence of the Jewish heroic act. When a woman was enjoined with this personality trait to develop it to its highest degree, it was a very special gift that was given to her. It's symbolized by the fact that woman was created from a certain part of the body which is private in two senses. The rib is generally closed and it's located beneath the skin. But in the Jewish context, hidden from public view does not imply inferiority. For instance, in Genesis, when an angel visits Adam, they ask, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" Abraham answers, "She's in the tent." To which Rashi replies, "Tzinuahi." She was a very private person. Yet we find that Sarah, according to the sages, achieved a greater spiritual stature than even Abraham. A few chapters later, we read that God instructed Adam, gave him the best marital advice that one could possibly have when he had faced with a dilemma between what Sarah told him what to do, and he didn't know if he should listen to her. And God said to him, "Kol asher tamalacha Sarah shema v'kala." All that your wife Sarah tells you, you listen to her. You listen to her voice. So, for me, this is the best marital advice that I can give anybody. But our sages learn from this that Sarah's power in prophecy, her spiritual height was greater than Abraham's. And although in life they lived together, Abraham took the public role. This implies absolutely nothing about the personal importance or the spiritual greatness of Sarah. The truth is that the Jewish hero is the hero of the inner stage, not the public stage. All the wonderful, important spiritual things that will happen to you in your lifetime, almost exclusively, I will tell you, will happen in private. Will happen between you and God. Your spiritual greatness is something that happens in private. Today we are losing the ability to relate to that inner dimension, that inner directed striving for our souls. And so we place so much more effort on the public sphere. And what does it look like? What do we look like to others? Tzniut is not restricted to women. The high points of the lives of all the major figures of the Bible occurred in private. See Jacob's fight with the angel, Jacob's dream with the ladder. It was just Jacob and God, or Jacob, it was just one-on-one. An important aspect of the religious moral act is its privacy, far from the approval of the crowd. Yeah. Whether you are kosher or not is a matter of your private life. You know, what do you eat? Nobody's watching you all the time. How much you give to charity is your personal, private decision that you make. Whether you observe Taras and Mishpacha, whether you observe the laws of a family ritual, And whether you go to the mikveh or not, whether you choose to observe that, that's your business. Nobody knows it. The essential aspect of all spiritual acts is its privacy. It is in this light that we understand the classic Jewish legend that the world is maintained in each generation by the merit of 36 saintly souls. These people are very saintly, and they have no idea that they are one of the 36 for whose sake God maintains the world. They strive their whole lives and do good deeds, and they don't think about it, and they don't think about a reward. And it's done in private. Public and private are necessary aspects in the lives of both men and women. Neither sex is restricted to this area, but traditions say that the private sphere for the woman is the most powerful. However, even a man whose primary involvement is public was reminded that its high achievements are one thing, but the most important achievements are the ones that happen in private. Now I want to move on to some more fundamental things. What is the nature of woman? How is she distinct? We believe that God has two sides, a masculine side and a feminine side, and so do we all. We say there's the Malchut. You know about the Sfirot, the mystical spheres. The one that reacts in this world is Malchut, the kingship of God. That's a masculine side. Talk about God as the kingship of God. God is the king. But we also talk about God as the Shekhinah, which is very hard to translate. We translate it as the presence of God. Shochein in Hebrew means to dwell. The dwelling of God, presence of God. Where is the Shekhinah? Where is the Shekhinah? Where is this presence of God? Well, I can tell you, you can go to Israel, and if you go to the Western Wall, you feel very strong. The Shekhinah is sometimes described as being on top of the wall, weeping for her children. One of the problems that we bring to bear in prayer, I talked about that prayer in detail in the synagogue yesterday. One of the more deeper problems with prayer is that we pray only to God, King of the world, on that masculine side. We must also pray to the Shekhinah, the presence of God, the feminine side. You must pour your heart out to God. You can't just read the prayers and think that's sufficient. It's like giving a line to a woman in a singles bar and thinking that's going to work. You know, if she doesn't look in your eyes and see that there's something valuable there, there won't be any connection. Praying to the Shekhinah is really deep prayer. We call God Harachaman, the All-Merciful. Rechem in Hebrew means womb. Harachaman doesn't really mean the All-Merciful. Harachaman literally means the womb. Well, can you come across a more feminine term for God than that? Today, in the non-Jewish circles, and even in some Jewish circles, there's a move to make the translations of the Bible to be sexually neutral. We don't translate God as He.
Yeah.
Well, they use the word God, or they try different things. Or some try to use he and she. The thing in Jewish terms, it's a ridiculous exercise. Because certain names of God are inherently masculine, and certain names of God are inherently feminine. God's name himself, the name of God, Yud Hey Vav Hey, the Hey at the end of a word is a feminine ending. The name of God itself has a feminine ending. And if you want to further study the name of God, maybe we'll be probably doing that, not in this class, but in my other classes. And I do that from time to time. You'll see the first two letters are very indicative of the masculine side of God, and the second two letters of God's name are indicative of the feminine side.
Hashem.
Hashem is, that's it. That is God's name. But we say Hashem means the name. We don't we don't talk about the name because we're not supposed to. We're not supposed to mention the name, and we're not supposed to recite it. Only the high priest was to recite it once a year on Yom Kippur. So since we don't know how to recite it, and we're not supposed to try, not like the blank witnesses. So I won't use their understanding of the name. Then their understanding of the name, from my perspective, is flawed. Because the way God's name is written, to give them that pronunciation of God's name, it's written with the vowels of the Hebrew Adonai, which is the way we read it when we see it, which means my Lord, my Master. But that's a story for another time. Mother Earth is a very powerful image of God. The feminine is a receptive force. You can picture a woman just not much like a satellite dish, taking in all this sensory perceptions. That's why you see women's clothes. Very often you have this sort of shape to it, the half of a bowl shape, receiving things. If the woman receives light and energy, she just soaks it up. And biology. Let's take biology. It's the feminine produces what the masculine starts.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
That's probably why we talk in the masculine. The feminine is in the back, working on the masculine. The male gives seed, and the woman produces. The feminine side is more creative. It's the creative side. A receptive force is something that accepts things within and brings out the good within them. And because she's in touch with her eternal depth, she's not afraid. Beauty is a divine attribute. When a woman frees herself and lets the divine flow through her, she becomes extremely attractive. When a woman is very shallow, when she begins to just emulate the masculine traits that society puts forth, she's not anywhere as attractive. Society tells a woman that she has to be beautiful in order to compete with her sisters. What we need is divine unity, divine beauty, to unify ourselves. Jealousy. Instead of exalting what comes in, they attack what comes in. They emphasize the weakness instead of the goodness. Change is always the work of the feminine, initiated by the feminine. Women know things. Men think in the short term, women think in the long term. Women just don't let their ego get in the way. They're not interested in how they appear sometimes. Mothers don't care about being threatened. Women generally want to have results. They want to see the things are done right. They don't care who gets the credit for it. And a woman may play on a man's lower ego to get him to do the things that she wants him to do, and he'll enjoy doing it. I bet women talk to each other about how they get the men to do the things that they want. Society has ignored the feminine for so long. So women have become agitated about the recognition of the feminine. In that sense, we had this old women's movement, right? But what's emerged from the women's movement is that women have to a great extent adopted masculine beliefs. I'll prove it to you. How's a woman's power revealed? Manly or sexy in our society? That's how woman is looked upon. Why do women wear shoulder pads?
Manly.
Because either they want to look more manly,
Not really.
or maybe they want a woman to look like she's got a smaller waist because she's got bigger shoulders, right? Which makes her look sexy, which is the masculine image of a woman. See, we've masculated women to either fit the image of what men want women to be in society all the time, sexy. You can't sell anything without putting a naked woman in front of it. Even truck parts. You take a look at the calendars that they send out. God. Or you make a woman look either sexy, a man's view of what a woman should be, or a woman to look more manly. Yeah, that question.
But I'm just going to add that if the men are the ones that designed it,
But if you wouldn't buy them,
those
right?
y'all dictate to us what y'all want us to wear.
That's not true. Besides, after a while, they get messed up. You have to cut them out anyway.
Yeah.
They do. They get lumpy, and you have to get rid of them. They don't. when you wash them or dry clean them, they start getting lumpy.
But-
and you have to get rid of them.
Yeah.
But my point is, why can't the woman's power be revealed as she is? The feminine side, the nurturing side. In the Middle Ages, women were either a Madonna, like a Madonna, or a whore. There was no room for her as mother, as counselor to her husband, children, community. Have you seen the movie Dancing with Wolves? Just pointed it out to me when I saw it. It was just so striking. I remember the scene where they had the powwow and the teepee, and you had all the men around smoking pipes, and they were making these big decisions, but the wives were right behind them, whispering in the ear, telling them what to say. I mean, it was just so powerful an illustration of this. A woman's not really interested in being, I'm not talking about a specific woman, I'm talking about the feminine trait. That's interested in being in the forefront so much as getting results. Making sure things are done right. While the masculine side, the role is overt, the woman's role is covert, subtle. Like, you talk about Mother Earth. How does Mother Earth feed the earth? The water coming through the ground quietly. Can't see it.
Well, do you think that part of the, rebellion by women in today's society has to do with the fact that Christianity, the conservative Christians I know, the man rules not only in the public sphere but also in the private, and there's not an equality, there's not a balance there. And
I don't
so
know if it's
think
Christianity so much. It might be as what society is like.
I guess I know
Jewish
Christians
homes,
who have
Jewish
taught
homes are
that,
like that also.
that the man is the head of the
Yeah,
household.
I'm the head of the household. It's got to be my way. Don't talk to me like that. I'm the father.
Stop.
I wear the pants. You don't think this goes on in Jewish houses?
Stop. What does Clinton do?
Nah.
Listens to Hillary.
There's a the resurgence of concern over the nature of the feminine and the need for the feminine to be held sacred and recognized. But this is being done in a non-theistic way, ignoring the Shekhinah, presence of God, the feminine side of God. It doesn't have a softness to it. It doesn't have the potency which is characteristic of the feminine field. Society has lost so much of its connection with the feminine. Women just don't know what to do. They're so unsure of themselves. There's a confusion today about what women should be like. They want to be equal, they want to have opportunity, but they don't want to be just like the men. You know?
We're getting tired of wearing pants.
I know a lot of women who'd stay home if they could, but now society's gotten to the point where you can't.
Can't
Everybody's
manage.
got to work.
It doesn't
too
work
late.
that way.
Okay. In essence, man is like, masculine side is so much like Adam 1, who was like the conqueror. But the woman is more of the feminine side is more nurturing. And just the way the woman is constructed, the woman has breasts to sustain life, to give life. Now, I'm going to say something that would seem totally wild. Just keep your try to keep your mind open. Think about it. Women are like vessels. I talk about this receptive power to take in the light in God, almost like a satellite disk. Women are full with all these bizarre and marvelous fluids that go within them, a part of some kind of reality that is unique to them. Women don't like to talk about it. They can just look at each other and they understand. Do something wrong, and a woman will catch you. She'll just know. No one has to tell her. She's got this sensus apparatus all within her, feasting floating all around the world. And when you have a woman in your life, you know that you're just never alone. Somehow she's there. When a woman comes under the chuppah, what does she do? The chuppah is symbolic of a man's domain when you get married. When she walks around 7 times, she puts her protective shield around. And that stays with you wherever you go. It's a good thing if you know how to use it. Most cultures, women are when Miriam, Moses' sister, was his confidant, his sounding board. She wasn't in the forefront, but it was because of her merit that the Jewish people were able to sustain themselves for 40 years in the desert. The rabbis teach us. And when Miriam died, Moses just fell apart. There was an important point, I just can't remember, I get distracted. Oh yeah. This has its negative aspects to it, and positive. The positive would be, for instance, a child hurts himself in school. Take it to the nurse's office. And child sits there real quietly. Okay? Mother comes in, all of a sudden the child explodes in crying. They can just let it out because the mother's here. Right?
Attention.
What is that? It's only with mother that you can let out your feelings. You couldn't do it with the nurse. Even when daddy comes, it's just not the same. I can tell you that. There's a certain power to this. But there's a certain negative aspect to it as well.
Mommy will give him anything.
I mean,
When
women.
he's crying.
The problem with the feminine side is that this receptivity is such that sometimes women don't know how to let go. I mean, you do something wrong to a woman. 10 years later, she'll remember. Not only what you did and what you said, but what color shirt you were wearing.
We rule.
What needs to be done is the woman to understand this and men too, to this feminine side. And then, you know, it's a big thing in the men's movement today for men to discover their feminine side. There is such a thing. I don't know if you've heard about it. And I've worked very hard on that too myself, especially in meditation. Because when you begin to relate to the feminine side, you have that real powerful connection to God that I spoke about before, the Shekhinah. If you believe in reincarnation, our sages tell us that you don't necessarily, if you come back as a male if you were male, or female if you're female. You know, I always said to my wife, I'm jealous that I wasn't able to have that bonding that she had with my children, and be able to nurse my children in that way. You know, so maybe it's my turn now to be a male, or maybe it's her turn now to be a female. I mean, it's hard to say. But if we could begin to understand the masculine and feminine sides and the real potency and power of the feminine, how it's being destroyed and put down, and not allowed to shine forth in society, and that if we allow ourselves to be in touch with our feminine side, both men and women will become more attractive and more manageable human beings. Now, does it mean that a woman should not be in the forefront? That a woman should not take positions of leadership in society? No, it doesn't mean that at all. A woman has a masculine side also too. A man has a feminine side. But while a woman could take a role of leadership, she must not forget her feminine side and understand that she has great strength there, and should not ignore that. And that could help her in leadership. Probably one of the things that are missing in this world of ours is that kind of leadership that is in touch with the feminine side. And not interested in so much in form, and but more interested in results, getting things done. The feminine side again is very creative, very potent, and something that we need really to really work on today. And how do you do it? How do you do it? I'll just leave you with this thought.
Well, you don't do it with a big mouth, you do it with a quiet mouth.
Yeah, but also understand that that although society may project a certain image of what a woman should be, that's not really what is important in the way a woman should be. And women should emphasize their more positive traits. And we should really be offended by all the pornography that goes on today. Can't turn on television at 10 o'clock at night without seeing pornography. You have billboards that cause accidents because of the pornography on it.
I watched the ball game, sorry.
Watch the film.
Right field.
Huh?
I said right field.
Right field?
At Atlanta Football.
Hooters.
Mhm.
Hooters sign. Yeah. Yeah, it's demeaning. Yeah.
I still, at some point, and we may not have time today, would like to talk about the idea, though, of, because I've been doing a little bit of reading about this, about how, you know, I understand what you're saying about the man has to spend more time in shul because he's, you know, needs to do these things. But the woman's the one that has to be at home preparing the home for Shabbos or whatever holiday, and yet most people don't value, maybe they should, I think they should, they don't value domestic work. Domestic people are not paid well. And so how do you justify, I mean, it still feels a little bit like it's
The second
okay,
citizen.
we're patronizing them. Okay, what you're really doing at home is really more important, and the man is in shul because he needs to be there because he's not as high up as you. But yet, I don't know if people really respect what the woman's doing.
I'm not
She's
saying
still
a
there
woman
washing
needs
the
to be at
dishes
home.
and- you know what I'm
That's
saying?
not what I said.
Okay, no, I know, but it's just something that occurs to me with all this.
But you're right, and we should talk more about it next
I'd
time.
like to.
But also I'm saying that there's no reason why a man can't be at home either.
Oh, okay.
And many of our rabbis, sages, had, in the Talmud you would see this very prevalent, had domestic tasks to fulfill. They all I shared in the work of the home.
Oh, I want to read that.
Okay.